Good afternoon, we are back. Thank you for subscribing again, and make sure you subscribe if you are new here. I'm going to give you a little rundown of what I've had to do to run the gauges in the Corvette, and I was very new to this car. There was only like one video on a C5. There were not any videos on how to wire a C6 or how to get the shortcuts and basically get down to the nitty-gritty without having to look and watch and study the car and spend so much time finding out how you want to actually do it. So I'm going to give you the shortcut. This car is done a little bit differently from the get-go, so it helped out a lot. I'm hoping these red neons don't like overwhelm the video quality, but we're going to hit them anyway. If you're not familiar with the channel and you're new here, we got a boosted 240SX, we got the Vet, we got a truck and some other stuff, review videos. We'll go ahead and snap to an intro now. But for now, I started with powering the gauges. We're running an AEM wideband X series, the newer one with the extra decimal for a little bit better reading. And we have an Evo style Pro Sport gauge. Starting on the floorboard, I knew I didn't want to go to the back of the car like some people have mentioned to get power source. I wanted to switch power source. We actually have really good light down here, so I'm just going to use the red light. But it had these really nifty pieces in here already. Fuses, I'm not exactly sure what they are, but I've read a lot about them on the forums when it came to wiring this particular car setup. So a lot of guys mentioned that you can use your mirror fuse, which is switched, and you can use your heated seats, and you can use one other one. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but after looking at it, I eventually found out that this is a power source. I believe this right here is the courtesy lamp. So these neons are powered, actually. The neons for like the rear view mirror and stuff are powered by the accessory, which, you know, turns on when the doors open. So the car will light up when the doors open. It's pretty cool. This is the heated seat switched power. It already had a power tapped into, which I'm not exactly sure what it went to. I have this module I already know about that's got sensors on the car so I don't run into stuff. Kind of like an alert system for bumper sensors. And then for some reason, whoever had this car before me decided to put a shift beeper system in it, which there's like a whole separate module in there that's powered from here. So I'm guessing that's where some of the power is coming from. I simply added another power wire to this setup and spliced into the heated seat fuse, because I don't have heated seats in this car, but everybody knows on the forums and in general that they're powered anyway from the factory, regardless of you actually having the heated seats. So I ran myself an extra power wire. I used a coat hanger to basically go across the trainee tunnel, and that's that going there. I did not want to worry about drilling or, you know, scratching paint away for a ground over there. So there was already a ground over here, and I'd already played with this bolt here a few times, just testing out power sources to make sure I started out with the right stuff instead of wiring everything, not knowing if it was going to work or not, or switch on when I wanted it to. So I went ahead and ran my secondary ground off there, and then ran it all the way to the other side, just like the coat hanger scenario. And now that will be the ground supply for all the gauges on that side, as well as a sensor under the hood, because I did not want to tap into my map pressure sensor. Since I don't know exactly what wire that is, I didn't want to run that much extra wire, and frankly I ran out of wire. So this is pretty simple. If you're not familiar with the Corvette, this is just a little floor panel. You kind of like push it up, there's plastic in the way, you just kind of push it forward, and then boom, it looks like a regular floor again. It is pretty cool. And then you come back up and you can flip it down, and then you have access to, you know, otherwise where you would want to get your power from for your gauges. Everything is not tucked yet properly because I started running everything through the door here, and I just did not like it. I knew I was going to want to go through the car, so I will show you where I did that. Over here, obviously the power wire comes out, as well as the ground. I already have the power snaked up. Power comes over here and hangs out the steering wheel, so I know which one's my power since I'm using same colored wire throughout the car. The ground wire is that one on the floor that has not been snaked up all the way yet, so that's where we will get our power and our ground source for the gauges. We will end up trimming them down. I'm running the harness outside the actual gauge pod. So for our sensor inside the engine bay, I ran 3 additional wires. There's a power and a ground because I did not feel like scratching up the engine bay and adding a new ground source out there. So I ran the ground and the power in here, as well as a signal wire to send the boost pressure reading to the actual boost gauge. Those 3 are labeled and ready to go. Very simple way to do this, honestly. I noticed the guy online and I did the same thing he did. was you take your dead pedal out. That's your dead pedal. It's got 2 bolts, one at the top, one at the bottom that goes into the wall. The top one goes into the floorboard or into the firewall, so to speak. When you get that dead pedal off, you have basically use your hood latches. So your hood latch wire will go back there, and you see where the wires went in. Basically what I did here was when you drill into the firewall, you don't have a lot of options for where you're going to drill. So I basically had to choose where I was going to drill for where I could fit my actual drill itself. I did not want to pull off the fender and everything to do this, so I did it from the inside, and I went straight through right there, and the hole was very easy to get to. The hole came out right behind the reservoir for the washer fluid, so that was very easy. I got that situated. The C5 video that I watched, when he pulled out his little panel in here, which I've already done, put back together, reinstalled and everything, he pulled this panel out and his washer fluid reservoir was not there. Mine was. It is huge. It is like this big. It is ginormous. There's a bolt here and a bolt way up in here that you have to get under the car and contort to get to. I ended up giving up pulling the whole washer reservoir out, so you could actually lift that reservoir once you've undone those bolts and you have access. And once I shoved the coat hanger through the hole and the firewall back here, the coat hanger comes out right behind the reservoir, and that's how I snake the rest of my wires. When I snake my wires, I like how I did this. This ended up being really clean. So everybody taps the 1/2-inch line on the brake booster. There's already 2 convenient nipples here. Kevin just mentioned confirming boost source. So I pulled this vacuum line off, had my wife plug the nipple and plug the hose, and the nipple's got plenty of vacuum. So that's what we ended up tapping. I did not tap the one that went into the actual piece right here, this garbage debris stopper, I guess, whatever, because there's already a debris stopper on my actual sensor. So I trailed this particular vacuum line down until it was out of sight, which is right down here and underneath a whole bunch of stuff, and then I put my vacuum tee in. After the vacuum tee, you run your little mini filter, which is that little plastic doodad down there. You can see it's that white little thing. It's like a little circular piece with 2 nubs on it. It's basically an air filter for the line, and then my sensor is tucked further down there where you can't see it, and then the lines and everything run into that hole that I cut, which everything from here is really easy access. It is not hard to snake and fish wires from and through here to get to the inside of the car. So the boost line is ready. Everything's wired in here for power and signal wire. We just have to wire everything inside the car, and that's what we're going to do now. The installation of your actual gauge pod from Autometer is a little bit more in depth, so I'm going to do that separately. So yes, you will end up having to drill through the A-pillar. Most people, that's the most notorious question. Will I have to drill into my perfectly good parts? Yes, you will. Drill a hole that's big enough to accept your wideband wiring harness. Don't just drill a hole that's like 1/8 of an inch or just big enough for these wires, because you got more harnesses that have to come through here. I drilled it here specifically because that's where the arch came up first, so that was the furthest point at the bottom closest to feeding it in that I could feed the wire in. So it was just most convenient than like doing it way up here or doing it right here where this slopes down again. That hole's drilled there. When you put the Autometer gauge system on, or the pod, I think it's important that when you're mounting it with the little plastic screws they give you, hold it into place. Because if you just put this thing on, let go, and then drill holes and put the plastic pieces in, it's going to move 1/8 of an inch, the fitment's going to be off, you're going to hate it, you're going to end up with a bunch of fix-it holes, and it's just going to be really bad and turn out really terrible, and you're going to hate it, and you're going to hate life. So every time I drilled a hole, I would hold this stuff together to the fitment and, you know, making sure it was as good as you can get it so it doesn't look bobo. Drill your hole and then put your plastic pieces in. Same thing here. I clamped it down like that to make sure everything was level here. Drill your hole, put your little plastic pieces in. I like these little plastic pieces. I imagine a lot of people would not want to use them because they think the A-pillar will stay on by itself, or at least a gauge pod, and that's cool if you want to do that. I'm sure it'll hold up with as tough as it is when it's actually mounted in the car on the A-pillar. But I went ahead and added these. I thought they were pretty cool. This piece right here, I'm not sure if it's because I was bending and pulling back on this so much, but it hangs up a little bit, so it was nice to add this plastic piece here and here to kind of hold this down and keep it level and make it look clean. This is where like the mouthpiece sensor goes to hear me when I do like voice calls on the radio system. But yeah, it came out really good. It looks really cool. So we're gonna go ahead and throw this thing in now and go ahead and get it wired. All right, we are nearly done. We got the wiring disaster consolidated and situated. That's what you power from your boost sensor, your ground, and your signal wire from your boost sensor, your power and your ground from over at the ECU area, all converging to here. And we're just going to hide our signal wires from now for the wideband until we get our data logging situated. And now we're about to put it back in. Handy dandy towels away. from protecting my stellar Corvette dash. And here goes nothing. Now all of the wires are coming out below the tabs, which I just realized, which is good because now they're not in my way when I'm trying to put the whole system in. And there you have it. That looks way better already. Mind you, once this trim piece is out, like the last video I did, watch the A-pillar video on how to remove it. This trim piece is what holds it on. Without this trim piece on, this thing comes off no problem at all. Alright, ladies and gents, I'm excited. This will be our first official time monitoring boost, seeing boost on a gauge. Hopefully we've got the right line tapped. I tapped both lines actually, ultimately. And it doesn't seem to matter if it's a negative or a positive pressure line. Hopefully we can get out of here. I didn't realize that I was I'm gonna take this plastic off officially for the first time. You know, like this video, if you're the guy that officially gets gauges in his car and he gets in his car from that point on, he like engages his fuel pump first so he can see his little doodads come on. It looks so good. I love it. Oh yeah, there we go. So far we've read about a negative 14 so far. You know, 15, 16, 17, 16. I love that red. I don't have the wideband running right now because we don't have the sensor mounted, so I don't even have it plugged into the harness and sending that empty clip power. So, food for thought on why that's that way. Alright, we are reading boost. I got into a little bit and got into like -4. It'll be kind of interesting to see where we start pulling actual boost. Into it a good bit and I haven't seen over 1 pound of boost. It's interesting to see how a car that's not turbocharged builds boost. Well, so far so good. The gauge is working really well. It seems to be accurate. It's usually in the -14 to -22 range. Just depends on how I'm driving. It definitely reacts way different than my boosted 240 that's back at the house because this is a supercharger that's driven by the belt, but with the intake housing, it's not a Whipple, it's a Vortec Pro charger, so to speak. If you like this video, make sure you give it a big like. If you have any questions, make sure you comment down below. I'm happy to answer them. I hope you like the video. If you're not subscribed, make sure you do subscribe. If you are new here, which there are a lot of new people, thank you for subscribing. We will leave it right here. We will kick it with the outro. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Like a shadow dark.